the Dr. Deborah Show, and this is the show where we talk about bringing peace and calm into your life. Later in the show, we'll be talking about mental health stigma. We're also at KCSB FM Santa Barbara 91.9, and today we're actually going to be doing a special show for our fund drive, and the theme of our fund drive is space. So someone Lisa came up with a great idea of holding space to support others for the show, because that's kind of what I think health and well-being is all about. And KCSB is a platform for cultural expression and thoughtful discussion, providing a diverse educational forum. And I'm a Santa Barbara-based clinical psychologist, and I specialize in pediatric neuropsychology. And during my clinical training and my current work, I've treated thousands of people, and I want to share my experiences with you. I'm also a UCSB alumni, and I live locally in Santa Barbara. And this show's all about our community and how to create compassionate conversations about our well-being and health. And again, I want to welcome our listeners to the Dr. Deborah Show. It's wonderful to have you with us. As a reminder, this show is psychoeducational. It's in the area of neuropsychology and well-being. So it's not meant to replace professional mental health advice or therapy. So if you do believe you suffer from a particular disorder, just please do reach out for professional help. Today on the show, we're going to be talking about mental health and well-being with a focus on Black history with our very special guest, Carrick DeHart. And Carrick is a UCSB graduate in ethnic studies with a minor in child psychology from UCSB. And he's in the Santa Monica High School Hall of Fame, the UCSB Athletic Hall of Fame, the Santa Barbara Court of Champions, and he has 10 plus years playing professional basketball nationally and abroad. And in 1990, Carrick was signed as a free agent with the Celtics and their training camp. And Carrick worked and volunteered in the nonprofit recreational world at the Santa Barbara United Boys Club, starting a club, girls, elite development basketball program called the Santa Barbara Blazers. And that was instrumental in changing the charter of the Boys Club to the United Boys and Girls Club of America. The Blazers, established in 1969, are committed to preparing students to be concerned, involved, and contributing members of their communities. And Carrick then went on to work for the Page Youth Center here in Santa Barbara, developing after-school recreational programs, senior fitness, and elite sport training in partnership with Titan Sports, Jacques Devore and Rob Bolton. Carrick has worked with former high school coach George Quintero, and he started the California Storm Nike Girls elite basketball program. He worked at UCSB Advancement as director of development for Unrestricted Gifts for 4 years, servicing the Orange County and San Diego area, raising unrestricted funds and working with area committees. Carrick then went on to work at UC Riverside to become a Division I assistant coach for 2 years, and currently he's the director for major gifts for Cal State University Channel Islands. He still has a passion for fitness, skill development, and coaching, and currently volunteers at Newbury Park High School as the women's varsity assistant and currently assistant basketball coach. Carrick provides skill-specific training, condition and injury prevention training via startup business called Oofball, which is the medicine ball with a bounce. And he also believes there must be an effort made to support wellness and life balance at all levels. Welcome to the show, Carrick.
Yeah, it's quite a mouthful.
That is a mouthful. I know. We have to make that shorter. I'm going to work out saying that. Well, this week we're here because we have a special fund drive episode, and we're celebrating KCSB's 58th year on the air.
Wow.
And so we're going to be weaving in the topic of the Isla Vista protests in 1970. And how moments in UCSB's history symbolize our promise to amplify community voices and protect our rights to freedom of speech. So we take 10 days a year to let our listeners know why we love KCSB FM and what we do, what we can do to help the station operate. So we are hoping that you'll call in today. There's some great gifts. So for every time you donate, like $25 or $50, you get a gift back. There's concert tickets and gift certificates that you get back. So if you're interested in calling, the number is 805-893-2424. So, and then back to the show that we're talking about, which is related to Black history. And I think it's a really important topic, especially because in 1970, February 27, 1970, we had some major protests at UCSB where the Bank of America was burned. And so I was thinking it'd be fun for Carrick and I to talk about that intersection between mental health and like freedom and standing up for your rights and protesting.
Definitely.
So, well, and also I like to just talk briefly about mental health, but I'll just describe it very briefly how I would describe mental health, which is like a physiological balance where our heart's beating at a nice even rate, our nervous system feels balanced, and our thoughts are not too overwhelming. And that gives us a sense of inner peace. I was wondering, Carrick, how would you describe mental health?
I kind of use Siddhartha's thought of it, like the flowing river or lake. It's stagnant but moving and deep at the same time. So I'd say a good balanced place where just kind of what you described. Even would be the place I would call it.
And for people who don't know who Siddhartha, I know that is a cool idea. Can you maybe just share who that is? Briefly, please.
How about I'll share a little bit about the book? Siddhartha takes the journey of having an ascetic life where he's really, strict on himself, and then he lives the full carefree life, and then he finds this place where he gets tired and exhausted and finds himself next to the river. And he finds that he has depth at the river, even though he's still and he's still flowing. So at some place he found balance. And so Siddhartha, without going into who he is more representative of the balance, right? Where there's this thing that makes you happy and even.
Mm-hmm. I know. I think we all need, that's the best word for it probably, is balance in all those different areas. And I think we all can find our own way of looking at mental health and well-being, too. And I like that.
Yeah.
Siddhartha. I'm going to have to learn more about Siddhartha.
Since we're talking about Black history, it's the still waters run deep, right? And so Siddhartha found himself next to still waters.
Is that where that kind of saying came from?
I don't know. I made the connection just from my own cultural background, blues and gospel and, our Black heritage. And so still waters are something that we all find our wisdom and our comfort and our strength in. So I saw Siddhartha in that light.
Yeah, I like that. It's kind of poetic.
Yeah.
Very nice. Well, and for those of you who are just jumping in, we're at the Dr. Deborah Show and with our special guest, Carrick DeHart, and we're talking about the intersection between well-being and mental health and Black history because we're honoring the 58th year of the radio station, but also the Isla Vista Bank of America burning, which was an intense historical moment of student activism and social justice at UCSB, which began as a peaceful protest at Perfect Park and spiraled into a community-wide retaliation against all symbols of corrupt justice. And I know we were kind of just talking a little bit about that before the show. How do you think, I know this is sort of probably a complex question, but how do you think that when people stand up and fight for something they believe in, like that, how do you think that impacts somebody's mental health?
Oh, wow. Well, actually, I think the inability to fight impacts the mental health, the place of being helpless, knowing that you're under attack or knowing that you're contributing. That's where the insanity begins, I would imagine. So maybe the mental health or the freedom begins when you voice yourself and you have the protest. Because remember, the protest started peacefully, right? So the protest started on an even place until it was provoked. But I think not having the voice, being deceived, and then having the shock of deception is really where the unbalance begins.
Although I think, like you're saying, listening to yourself is really, because I think if we learn to trust ourselves and what we believe is important, then that's really healthy for us.
Yes.
And I think that takes a lot of different levels, like our nervous system and the way we think about things and the way we respond or react.
And fellowship, right? So in protests, you find fellowship, I would imagine, right? You find a common ground, where places you may have not thought you had common ground with someone.
For sure. Well, basically, if you don't know the history, I myself am learning more and more about that. But basically, students sought to fight bigger powers at play, such as Bank of America at that time, especially, and they clashed with Isla Vista police during the chaotic events that did occur on February 27, 1970. And that night originated from protests and boycotts of Bank of America that were sparked by the students at UCSB, which is such a great thing that UCSB, I know, people being able to voice their opinion. And so Bank of America had been giving illegal loans to South African countries and then indirectly supporting apartheid against government regulations amongst other unsavory endeavors. So like they're funneling this illegal money to I guess, South African government. What do you think about all of that and how that relates to just our well-being, about people being corrupt and doing deceitful things?
I think, that trickles down into colonialization. It trickles down into all of that participation, right? And so you're abetting in a crime. And, it's it's vocal to American history, right? Americans kind of abetted to the oppression of people. It does it quite often. So obviously the students would have some type of say, and I think being enlightened on something really invokes a passion for change. And so one voice or one little ripple changes. We started with the Siddhartha analogy. It changes how the river reacts. And so I think that's the view. We're celebrating the 58th year of UCSB, and I would encourage everyone to support. I think that freedom of speech, that ability to have access to information and to share, I think that's the ultimate power.
It is. I actually, I didn't put it in my work for my show, but I thought it was interesting as I was researching that there was actually a guy who was on air at the radio station here. I'm forgetting his name, but basically while he was on air telling people about what was going on with the police and some of the not nice things that were happening, they didn't really appreciate that, and they actually came in and tried to shut down his show. And then I think they called the chancellor, and the chancellor said, no, you can't do that, but, you have to curb maybe what you're saying. But I think it is a great avenue to have freedom of speech.
Right. What do you think? I won't call it an act of war, but communication, transition, transportation, food, those are the first things you take out when you want to eliminate things and people.
What do you mean by that?
So if you go to war, the first communication and transportation, so you can't transport goods and you can't communicate to people. So you're restricting the ability for the people to gather if they take away the voice from the radio.
The radio is kind of like one of the last, I feel like, free avenues of speech in a way, where you're not really too restricted.
A cornerstone of communication.
Exactly. It is a corner. And especially at KCSB, because I love that, they really focus on, it's like a community platform, to bring us together. But I think, corporations like Bank of America have monetized like human suffering for years. And I think that the students in Isla Vista just basically said they're not going to take a blind acceptance of that. Did you ever hear about people talk when you were at college here? Did anybody ever talk about that?
I had the privilege of being through the whole, in a more of a black experience way, when I first came on board. My first night here at UCSB, I sat next to Lloyd Stewart, who was a former UCSB basketball player and Tuskegee Airman, and he actually had to sit out of a basketball game because he was a black athlete here. And so that journey and that pursuit for freedom and access led us to the conversation about Bank of America. And obviously, Bank of America, if I remember correctly, had its presence here in Goleta as well. It was kind of the only banks you could go to. So you had to live amongst it. So you automatically knew that, and what led to other incidents on campus. So I had a little knowledge, and I had maybe a little passion for change because of the knowledge.
I think, though, some of the protests over the years have changed, because I remember when I was here, there was the Latino Studies Department was protesting, and it was very peaceful and it was very well organized, but I don't remember like police or any kind of brutality happening.
Right. No, I mean, I'm a result of it. Actually, some of the protests, the reason why I'm an ethnic studies major is because they were trying to get ethnic studies in the UC system, and we had to collectively make a stand. So, because it's important to be culturally sensitive and not have microaggressions, and we're experiencing that now as we start to become more of a global nation, global country, or global community, I should say.
Yeah, but I mean, I like what the Dalai Lama says, that we're all here breathing in the same air. I mean, it's very divisive, but I think it's still important for us to really be outspoken. I'm hoping UCSB, I think they probably still allow protests and that sort of thing. But I just know UCSB also, like, what's great about the show is that I can have people come in and we can talk about these things and share our mind. So, and if you're just jumping in, I'm here with Carrick, and we're just talking about Carrick DeHart, and we're talking about Black History, because it's Black History Month, and like mental health and well-being. And also, if you're listening and you want to donate to KCSB, the phone number is 805-893-2424. There's some really great gifts. So anytime you donate, like if you donate $25 or $50, you get back like a gift certificate. You can get movie tickets. The grand prize is like, I think, an overnight stay in some hotels. There's a lot of really good things on there. Anyhow, back to talking about mental health and Black history. I was wondering, Carrick, from your experience, how do you think mental health and Black history kind of intersect?
Oh, man, I think that...
That's a big question.
No, well, I think our whole history is about mental health. Is about struggle and persistence and retaining yourself and hanging on to your dignity no matter what happens, right? And learning how to bear that and how to turn good, bad, any kind of situation into a positive. Our mental disposition and ability to persevere and forgive and move forward is one that's based out of a mental strength and a desire to love. So I think that when you look at any ethnic group, you can find that in their culture when you look close enough. And I think that is our mental health on both sides. We also have something that plagues us, but we also have some of the most incredible mental strength that I've ever encountered in my life at all areas. And most of it come from your, I wouldn't, and this adjective I'm going to use is going to be out of place, but out of your ordinary person, right? They're the greatest people you may encounter, even though we celebrate others, because they usually share that mental strength and that fellowship that we all need.
Right. It doesn't have to be somebody who's famous per se.
Oh, no doubt.
It's true. I know. I sit in my office and I listen to different, stories of people's journeys, and I kind of think everybody has their own beautiful story to share and to bond with other people too through that experience.
I can't really, I've had the privilege of being around many different people, but, what they think of themselves and where they got it seems always to have a very simple beginning.
Well, it doesn't have to be complicated, I guess, right? Love is in a way, I think love is kind of the cure. I've been reading Albert Einstein wrote these letters to his daughter, but he didn't want her to release them till she felt the world was ready to receive them. But basically, I've started reading them because she's been releasing them, and they're all about love. And he actually, one of them said that there's something much more powerful than his discovery of E = MC squared, which is love. Yeah. So I do think that's kind of the cure for most of what's going on in our world right now.
We're fighting for it right now, right?
Totally.
It's a time for voting, and the real fight is not over a political party, but it's over that you want love to persist and not antagonism. I mean, I mean, if we could really talk on those terms, I mean, we're talking Black history, so let's talk about it. That's really what it's about, right? And so as soon as we can embrace it, things become a lot easier, and you lose this anxiety because it's not distorted in conversation.
It's more authentic, you mean?
I think it's plain. I mean, if you want to use authentic.
Right. It doesn't get super complicated.
Right,
yeah, it doesn't have to be. It's true.
Yeah.
Well, I think sometimes when the story gets very long and complicated, it doesn't mean as much. It's true.
Are we going to cut down an introduction?
Yeah, I got to cut down my introduction.
No, mine.
I know. Sometimes we're going back. We're talking about the introduction I did for Carrick, which was pretty long. And sometimes the print's a little small, so I probably went on a little bit too much there. But you have accomplished a lot of great things. I wanted to honor that, too.
I appreciate it.
I know you're an amazing athlete, and also you've contributed so much to our community. Like, every time I hear about the Page Center, I think of all the work you poured into that. So it's great. And I think that's a way of being mentally healthy, too, and ties into Black history, too, because you're giving back to the community, you're creating more peace.
Yeah.
And spreading that love.
I don't think you ever get separated, right? So I think that's the secret. You never leave your community. We're alumni of UCSB, but I never really left, right? Hopefully I walk together with us in every place we go, right? I don't bring just my experiences. I bring our experiences that shaped a little bit of who I am, but it's us. And so that allows you to have a little more integrity about the things you do when you represent more than yourself. So, I think that exemplifies Black History Month more than, we definitely want you to understand, everyone should understand each other's history, but really from where the love comes from, right? How we want to participate, what we have to offer.
Mm-hmm. Well, back to the idea of protests, and I just think it's fascinating. As I was reading more and more about this, and I kind of didn't really fully realize how UCSB, I think actually that was kind of an unusual incident too, even nationally. The protests, and there were pamphlets and speeches, and people continued to use Bank of America, and the Bank of America continued to support apartheid.
Not to call UCSB South Africa, but I would imagine it'd be a little microcosm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, do you think that people? It seems like I think there's a great the department, right, with Black history and ethnic studies. Do you think that they? Yeah,
I think
You're talking. I know the whole
1970s, right? So I have to think about it. I always think that all of that was in its infancy and really developing and really, I would imagine, searching for its voice or demanding its voice be heard, other than searching for it, and letting everyone know the importance of sharing. It's an interesting time. I would hate to speculate or assume on what's happening, but I would assume that UCSB, not being South Africa, but could be a microcosm of things that were going on as far as being able to communicate and know what's happening.
Right. Well, I think UCSB does open up the the forum for being able to communicate and also to seek out justice.
Exactly.
I think, though, for the African American experience, it's been very generationally, and at least the article I was reading, and it was talking about the resources around mental health aren't in a lot of different communities, or the awareness. What do you think about that? Do you think in different communities that's happening? And I think it's really starting to catch up, but and it's not unique necessarily to African American communities.
Yeah, I think the conversation's hush hush, right? And your mental health is in your peer groups.
I would guess that would really affect somebody's mental health, though, because then it's like you can't fully express yourself, and then you're kind of suppressing something that's so critical to your well-being and also other people's well-being to accept that part of you.
Yeah, you're giving me thought here, but so I would say I'll think of my mental health and how I relied on my friends and the unconditional love that they provided, and that unconditional relationship, and being able to understand the difference between who was my unconditional friend and conditional. And so not being confused in that, or being able to express myself in a group of friends, allowed us to share things that would cause us distress. So we didn't own it, right? So we didn't really own the distressing things that would take us to a place that would make us dark. We expressed it, so it stayed in the light.
Right, and that also, I'm sure, gave you confidence.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And support.
Exactly. It didn't become a boogeyman, right?
Well, yeah, because I think it's like, I remember Mark Juergensmeyer, who started the Global Peace and Security major now, but I remember I was one of the first graduates in that minor. And he used to talk about terrorists, like, how we give terrorists power. The more we talk about that idea or feed into that. So I think it's true. It's important for us to not become afraid and compromise that part of ourselves. So how do you think, Carrick, like our Black history accepts or rejects mental health stigma?
Yeah, I think historically we've, I think we've been a little rejective of mental health. I think, I think we are compassionate. We'll take care of those that are ill, right? But the compassion of how to deal with it and identify it and be preventive, I think that is slowly evolving, right? I think that the resilience and the need to be seen or have your presence kind of, I don't know if it adds to the mental health issue, excuse me, but it does create a barrier of conversation.
You think that people in the like African American or Black communities, they're not talking about?
Yeah, because there's a toughness that you need. There's a resilience that you want to have, right?
But also, I think, like, I just remember in my studies and like my board exams and stuff, I mean, every culture expresses their mental health or their well-being in different ways.
Right.
So I think like maybe Black Americans have been kind of misconstrued because I think maybe the way they express themselves or the way they talk or those kinds of things. So it's like a misunderstood piece there.
Yeah. I spoke more about us not identifying some of the people who may have had mental health.
Right.
But our wellness is definitely in how we interact.
Yeah.
Our ability to handle seriousness with joy and jocularity and things of that nature, and compassion and dance and art, and
which are really healthy and
expression, athleticism. I mean, I'm not an athlete because I only like basketball. It is definitely a place where I balanced myself and challenged myself and tempered myself and had others hold me accountable. So it only wasn't because I enjoy putting the ball in the basket. It was definitely part of my mental health and my identity. Well, my search for my identity, right? It didn't define me at all, but it allowed me to express it in ways that broke down racial barriers for myself, but also reaffirmed my ethnicity.
It's very surprising. Well, people now really revere all the different athletes. I mean, it's just like I think that's a great way to diffuse that stigma too. Yeah.
Well, one thing happens when you become a part of a collective. You become one. So any barriers that were there before, if it be color, race, gender, those are gone. Those sexual orientation.
Those just slip away. I know. Well, that's the way it should be, really.
I have no concern.
Do you think that impacts other people who aren't necessarily Black, but, how you are a role model in that way?
Yeah.
Too, how you take care of yourself or how you express yourself?
Well, I think what ends up happening is you invest in certain things. So I'm going to invest in love, and I'm not going to invest in the other parts, even though I have the emotions that I'm human. But I think what I've learned sharing in these opportunities I've had through sports is that investment in each other it strengthens this positive, this unconditional love, however you want to articulate it or however it needs to be articulated appropriately in the context. But it just reinforces that. And so even when you are disagreeing with someone, you see that person or you in both sides of the conversation. You don't only see your side. So you like to think you don't see it. It may act like it, right? You may not acknowledge it, but down deep, if you want to be honest to yourself, you really you respect both sides of the conversation, even though you may be vehemently opinionated on your side. You really get it on the other side.
I was thinking about how, I know last time you were on the show, we were talking about sports and like parents and organized sports, and it's like it kind of actually feels a little opposite in some ways to what you're talking about, because there's almost like this divide, like independence. It's not as, it's kind of I guess a symptom of our times is how to be more together versus.
If you're a parent out there, sport is a no parent zone. Stay at home. Leave your kids at home. Drop them off.
Yeah, I know. Well, when you were working at the Page Youth Center, you probably dealt with a lot of different pieces of that, of how to get people together.
Yeah.
And I think that the student, back to the protests, I guess I keep trying to weave that back in here, because I just feel like the protests are part of UCSB history. They're also part of freedom. They're part of Black history. And I think a lot of people didn't even realize what those protests were about. And even myself, I don't think I was as well educated as I should have been. So this has been exciting for me just to learn more about what happened. But basically these students were inspiring change, and it wasn't necessarily at the national scale. It needed to be to execute like a long-lasting, effective boycott by consumers. But I think it gave people a way to release kind of tensions. So I think that was really a healthy way to get that out.
Oh yeah, and I think this is a great place of sharing information. So whatever information that needs to be shared that is productive and good, UCSB has a way of being able, if it's through faculty, students, alumni, volunteers, community, foundation boards, has this way of opening that vehicle. And
I think we're both kind of agreeing that, like, if there is something you're passionate about or you believe in, or you think there's some injustice happening, I think, one of the main reasons I do my work is like as a humanitarian, it's like, how do we make the world a better place? So don't back down from that vision or something, because actually it could be really instrumental and life-changing. I mean, probably the people who started the riot or standing up for what they believed in didn't think it was going to result in such a big event.
Well, so, I mean, at the time when apartheid was being dissolved, I was playing in Europe, and I remember watching a documentary, and the thing that struck me that the South African lady said that, how are you going to beat apartheid? And she said, we're going to beat them with weight. And when I first heard it, I thought it was WEIGHT.
Right.
But it was WAIT, weight. Wow. And so that weight means that every little incident or every little protest like started here at UCSB was a little chip at the stone of apartheid. And so that allowed them to have this, freedom of it, or freedom from it.
It's like, that's why I think it's so important for all of us to to give our little piece. It's kind of like, I remember there was a llama they used to share an office with, and he said, it's kind of like if you have a ship and you want it to move, to get to a new place. I mean, you have the big rudder in the front that needs to move and change, but then you also have all the little teeny rudders, and those are all the people that need to kind of get lined up to make the whole ship, shift and move. So any little part that you contribute is important. And, back to our fund drive, one of the reasons I'm on air at KCSB is because I always listened to this station during my years as a student at UCSB. And that history combined with like my connection to the local community and inspiring ideas for the show, where I think we can talk about what's important, really. I mean, there's nothing more important than having a conversation about a challenging topic or something inspirational, too, from someone who's had experiences. But at the same time, we have this external fundraising. So if you're interested in donating to our radio station, there's some great prizes, and the phone number to call is 805-893-2424. So every gift you give our station, we give you like a wonderful gift back, like gift certificates and concert tickets. So it's not even really like, it's kind of like a gift for a gift. So, and if you're just joining us, we're here with Carrick DeHart. We're talking about mental health, and Black History Month is here. So I thought that would be a great topics to talk about. I was wondering, Carrick, what are your thoughts on Black history and what what that's taught you about the attitudes people hold toward mental health.
Oh, so I think actually I think it's a great question.
Thank you.
I think I think I'm culminating that now, and so when I give a thought of Black history, or I think as I think about it, and you ask me the question, the word that keeps coming up to me is resilience, right? And so in there, what I think people should really talk about is this self-talk that I think that it exists in the Black culture, and it comes out. Most of it you hear through song. In literature, poetry, but there's this belief system, and then there's the perpetual self-talk. So I've always seen our mental health as one as being prosperous and one that shares with others. And so to reflect on that, and we reflect on all the great achievement and all the people doing monumental things, I think the one thing that should stand out to everyone is that they did have this mechanism as to move the needle mentally for themselves. And so they had a way of balancing and a way of seeing that brought light. And I think that gets really missed in a lot of things that you see in Black history. Maybe
or in any of our history.
Totally.
That richness, yeah.
Totally. I mean, American history, Black history, however you want to define it. But I think that is one of the biggest things that we need to put on the forefront, what it really took.
Well, I had a patient the other day that was talking about Maya Angelou, and I'm probably not saying her. Am I saying her?
Maya, yeah.
Yeah, that just, wow, what an amazing. It was somebody who was going through a struggle, and they were saying, wow, it's amazing what she accomplished, with her writing and poetry. And they were saying, I guess when she was like 7, she had these really abusive things happen, but she really overcame that by I think also what we all need is by listening to ourselves and believing in ourselves. But I think through Black history, right, there's been a lot of challenges to overcome. So I have a lot of respect and appreciation for that too.
I think when you take a breath and you look around, and you know that everyone has struggles, so you can appreciate those. And I would imagine that, I was reflecting on Maya Angelou, that she would have it as well, right? So she had those issues, but she also had someone who gave her this touch of love, be a hand of love that always was a thing that reminded you. I think hopefully everyone has a person, a thing, a song, a scent, a food, or someone that allows you to go there, right?
Well, I think
it frees you.
It totally does.
Totally frees you.
In fact, they've done a lot of studies in the last 6 months that have been coming out about expressive writing. Like, I love to have my patients write or draw or paint or do poetry or just anything. It doesn't have to be prescribed.
Yes.
I think that's really critical.
Garden, anything at all that expresses yourself.
And creative.
Yep.
I know that's kind of lacking, and I think definitely a lot of cultures, but I don't think in the Black culture it's really, because there's a lot of the music, dance.
Yeah. So I think there's there's a confusion of wealth.
Yeah.
So there's an accumulation of things.
Right.
And there's a socioeconomic standing. But our wealth is in doing what we love. And so
totally.
I don't think there's any real confusion that whatever we do over here, we're going to go do it for what we love.
I think, though, people are confused. I mean, even like as a professional athlete, they think, if someone's a professional athlete or a movie star, you make a lot of money, that's going to bring you happiness. But the things are going to bring you happiness.
Yeah.
But really, we have to fill ourselves up with, hope and inspiration and joy. And we can find that through interacting.
That's funny, yeah. I think a successful basketball possession gives a basketball player joy. The money and all the other stuff is stuff that they have to deal with.
Well, probably it's like an inner reservoir of just, pride and excelling at, discipline and, right?
An ability to free yourself. Right. I think that's the wealth. I think if you look back, in the ability to shut your mind down and be in the moment is the wealth.
Take a pause and not grab on to so many ideas about what you should be or how you should be.
You can't perform. if you're in that place, they
Right.
have words for them like slump or, error,
In
turnover.
basketball, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, baseball, basketball,
What are they called? Slump and
slump. Slump
So
is
you're
when you
trying to
don't
tell me I was
shoot the
slumping
ball.
over.
Yeah, same thing. You're not in good posture, right? So obviously, there's something in you that is not allowing you to be free. So to me, that's the wealth of it, right? That's the skill I took away most, was to empty myself.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I think people don't like to do that because we actually are in a culture of filling ourselves up with stuff,
Yeah,
with things.
Yeah, that seems contrary.
It is contrary. Well, I just thought also there was this guy, William Kunstler, the chief defense attorney in the Chicago 8 case, who at the
Right.
time of, I guess, the 25-year anniversary of the Bank of America burning, I don't think this was actually, then I'm a little confused, but I think this was during the actual event. He gave a speech at Harder Stadium that people believed would incite a riot. And so these cops gathered at what's called Perfect Park. I don't know if that's still there. And they were waiting. Is that still there?
I think so, yes.
Is it? Okay, cool. I didn't know that was there. Awaiting a massive disturbance. And when the students were simply participating in a peaceful union in the park, quote, they were, the police were dressed up in like full riot gear, ready for anything. And they came to a bunch of peaceful students coming back from their speech. And it was just an interesting contrast. And I think there's kind of like this violent apprehension that came from that, where it's like something so peaceful, but it was like misconstrued too.
Yeah.
In fact,
I was just saying it's stereotypical.
it's true. I know. Well, I mean, I think that's probably impacted. It probably was confusing for those protesters to believe in something, that was so important to them, and then to be kind of misled
well, I
again
think
and
it was
again.
the first time students may have been profiled as black, so they're going for a black cause, and you're going to be met with violence and resistance.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fact.
Plus 1970, that was coming out
That's
of
a
like
fact.
the 60s, which was,
It's a
I guess.
fact. It wouldn't matter if you look at the history. It's just a fact. It wouldn't if we assembled now.
Do you think that would happen again?
Oh, no doubt.
You think it would be even worse, or what?
I don't think I don't think the police riot gear would be the same. Obviously, there is some propaganda.
But I don't think they would allow a bank.
They wouldn't allow it to happen.
Yeah.
They wouldn't allow us to assemble anymore. They
Exactly.
would find some way to bar it.
I know but it's been good because I think with women's rights, even there's been more women protesting, and it seems like those have been somewhat peaceful. And also, there's been a lot of protests and riots and things around the world. I'm
Yes.
thinking it's in Japan that there's a big uprising right now with the younger generation where they're just like, we don't want to live this way anymore.
Exactly.
And they're very savvy. They have like umbrellas that they put for the like spray or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And they have glasses and tape and goggles and gas masks, and they're really like ready for it, but it's like counteracting warfare.
Civil rights, let them be prepared, right? They got a scouting report.
Pretty much. It's kind of like taking
Dogs,
on
tear gas, right?
it's like they've done the reverse now.
Water hose.
How do you think it's true? Well, I was reading too about the protests, and actually a student was shot that was totally innocently involved. He was just happened to be standing in the wrong place at the wrong time, like in front of in fact, I think he was going back to just check on the bank maybe, or check what was going on or something, and he just got shot. So sometimes it takes somebody's life being taken to make changes too, I guess. But hopefully we don't have to live in that kind of world. Hopefully we can move to a different way of standing up for what we believe in. We're in a really critical time, you know.
So here's the mental health there. You have to see it for what it is. So I think that if we don't acknowledge what will happen, we talked about consequence earlier. If we don't acknowledge what will happen, then that distorts the reality, and then you have distress. Mm-hmm. But if you're okay with what's going to happen when you protest, that these are the potential consequences, even though these are the outcomes we're going for, the distress goes away. And only thing that replaces it is passion, determination, courage.
I was thinking of, though, also there's the other just not to play devil's advocate, but also
Please.
the idea of just like fear, that how it would affect someone's mental health to live in a state of fear.
Yeah,
because then you kind of get into this fight or flight mode where you feel, like
Right.
it's based on survival.
Right. Well, so I think fear is okay, and fight or flight, both are okay. They're both appropriate at their appropriate time. The hardest part is to be stuck. Then that's
Right.
so. Yeah, there we go. Make that choice, right? You have to make. You're gonna run or you're gonna stay and fight, right? There you go. Is it time for the battle, or do we live to fight another day? And so, both in the appropriate situation are right. So. Don't distress yourself.
And also back to balance. It's like maybe we could let out little spurts of what we want to stand up for. Maybe we don't have to do a full-blown protest. I kind of try to do that throughout my day with interactions or people diffuse some of that.
Yeah.
I was wondering, Carrick, how do you think a person who receives support and information about Black history could help a person through some kind of mental health crises if, they feel like that's something that they relate with or identify with, and that gives them kind of a foundation to operate from?
I think that, I would, I would have them turn on music. I would have them go to a place because I think that it is the crux of who we are, of the ethnicity of our culture, is to be loving, caring people. We all have our own personalities, and you can find different things in different people, but the general core of it is to carry on that and care for one another.
Right.
So I think that I would ask them to look for that in the mental health and when you see or you want to engage in anything that's culturally African American or Black, whichever you feel comfortable utilizing, that is the portal. That's where it's coming from, even if it comes from you in a precarious way. But it's really coming from a place of nurturement.
Mm-hmm. Well, I notice a lot of people, like my friends, like to go. They have like Afro-Brazilian dancing and stuff. That you don't have to.
That's right. That's like I call my household Afro-Asian, right?
Yeah, because you have a blend of those two.
Where we're the melting pot.
Yeah, that's great though. Well, I think in like depth psychology, they talk about the Anima Mundi, which is like the soul of the world.
Oh yeah.
So really, it's like the way I was trained is it's kind of an illusion that we're all separate.
Right.
We're all like very similar, and even we supposedly are like dreaming the same dreams. Not literally the same people and places and things in our dreams, but the same essence of that.
Cause and effect, yeah. In our world, it's the one drop rule, right? Punnett square, right?
I don't know what's the one drop rule.
So if you're one drop of black blood, you're black.
Yes. Well, have you seen like how many people have one drop in there?
No.
It's probably a bigger amount than people realize.
I'll take what I learned in school.
I notice even being Jewish, like
the
people do
Punnett
those
square, right? So dominant recessive genes. So there's no way.
Well, it's like we were talking about. I think we all kind of came from Africa anyhow, and they've done these DNA gene swabs in like a marketplace in New York City with like hundreds of people, and they basically trace back everybody's gene to Africa.
Right.
And it's kind of very tribal in a way too. It's like I think we all are from tribes.
Yeah, I just laugh. I just say, have you ever watercolored, painted?
Yes.
So make your colors.
Exactly. Well, we're all
right.
different
It
shades.
all goes back to black. It goes back to black, gray, green. It's interesting.
You mean when you do your watercolor, it eventually
colors,
comes
right?
to that.
You want to make your colors in your paintings, and
yeah.
So if you want to make, it's interesting, right? That's where I first really kind of the analogy or the connection happened when I was a little kid. Like, wow, this is interesting. I can start with a color. I can make any color. If I put them all together, it's interesting when it becomes.
They come to me. Well, it's true. I think we're all just different shades of color, but we all are the same on the inside in a way. Not exactly, but pretty much.
Desires of the heart.
What'd you say?
I say desires of the heart, passions of the heart.
Right. Well, I think that's why it's important for us to listen to our heart and our gut, because our heart has a brain. It has actually many neurons, just like our brain, around it, protecting it. And also our gut has more neurons in it than our brain does. So there's a lot of research being done on how to listen more to our body sensations, our heart, our gut. We don't have to be so mental and stuck in our head about this is the way it kind of is. And if you're just joining us now, we're here with Carrick DeHart, we're doing our special fund drive show where we take 10 days a year to let our listeners know why we love KCSB FM. And I know I really love coming out to KCSB and being able to talk with community members. But it's also really important for us to get donations. So if you're interested, every donation you make, you do get a gift back. So you get like a concert ticket or gift certificate back. And the phone number to call is 805-893-2424. And we have time just maybe for like another question or two. I was wondering, Carrick, have you ever heard of any like campaigns or organizations in the Black history field that work specifically toward reducing mental health stigma?
Oh,
That's a weird question.
no, I don't think I mean, personally, no. I know in communities where usually it would come from the church, right? It's been the cornerstone of the Black community for quite a while, and I'm imagining that is evolving in other places. You probably have your community nonprofits, but I think that identifying it and just handling it on a personal level has been more of a weight than the stigma. I think that the stigma now is because you have depression and things of that nature, manic depression, is so that the family can cope as well as they have this energy in their house, or they have the different things that are going on in their family.
Sure.
And so that the community can support. I think we are just now beginning to recognize that we have to be honest about the stigma and that we have to be open about our family history in order to help the ones we love.
I agree completely. I always just like to ask that because I just think people listen to media and turn on their TVs or read magazines or books. And wouldn't it be great if each group of people or, there were more campaigns or organizations that focused on mental health or well-being as it pertains to whatever the needs are of that community.
Well, as we start to use inclusion, right, whatever it may be, if you have anyone in your family if we were a brother, sister, or we are in the global thing, we're different. And so you have this inclusive thought. So you have to think the same with mental health, physical disabilities, all of that.
I mean, it's a universal topic, really.
We need to be inclusive and knowledgeable so that we don't exclude them in daily life.
Well, and I guess I would think that would really actually improve the mental health, right?
Wouldn't it?
And also it would be a legacy for Black history, right? That would be a really positive. I think that would be beautiful.
Be very beautiful, right?
Yeah.
And it heals some wounds.
Exactly. And I think that's really critical.
And other people would prosper because once your neighbor's doing well, you will do well.
Totally. I know. Well, we have some idea that we have to compete. We're like always so competing, but it's true.
The Jones, they have sugar for you.
It's true. Well, I think that we live in kind of a divisive time somewhat, but also we're like maybe realizing what's important to us, right? Is that we don't have to be better per se than somebody else. We can share our beautiful side and they can share theirs and we can work together to collaborate.
Right.
I'm always trying to imagine a world where like each person has the opportunity towards self-peace and through the ability to overcome mental health barriers and obstacles to reach treatment. So
don't we call that old age?
Yes, I am. I'm getting older. I think I've always though felt that way.
That's the crown, right? I think that's the beautiful crown of aging.
Yeah.
If you can, I would
That's
say.
because Carrick and I have known each other a long time.
Yeah.
And now we're both wearing glasses. So,
I still can't see. But I just think that's the joy of aging and being able to share over time. And I think, I'm grateful for all my elders that I've been able to share time with. And
me too.
This journey thus far.
That's kind of something I think that's such a critical piece of society. I'm hoping the younger generation doesn't lose. It's kind of like how we respect our elders.
Yeah. We're talking about UCSB now. You have faculty and things around that. So they're your elders. They're your intellectual elders in your community that have offered their services and their talents to share with you. And so just like your students and our student body, right? It's a beautiful place, right?
It's true. I know. It's a great time to maximize, too. Like if you have an idea and you want to present it to a professor. I used to go and sit in my professor's offices, and it might stimulate something within you, and maybe you end up working on something even together.
I could name professors off the top of my head right now.
Yep.
That would,
We're
Otis
having positive
Madison,
flashbacks to our professor
Mr.
class.
Caps.
Yeah, I
Jerry
remember that too.
Tanowitz. I can go Jack Rivas. I can continue.
Oh, I know. I love Jack Rivas.
Chancellor Ewing.
Jack Rivas was an advisor
rest
here.
In peace. Yeah.
Chancellor, he was.
She.
Yeah. I don't remember Chancellor Ewing. I think I just Yang is in my mind. But I do remember Jack Rivas because he was my advisor and helped me many a time. And also Walter Capps, for those of you who are in Santa Barbara, he was kind of like a legacy, taught Voices of a Stranger, the Vietnam experience. Those were.
I would even go to talk about the EOP and just staff of that nature, financial aid, Mrs. Wilkes. There's just so many ways and so many people. When we talk about our elders, mental health, places you can find them.
And I think that students and people who are here at UCSB especially get overwhelmed because they have papers and assignments and pressures. But I think sometimes those talks you have with someone can actually really help with the pressures.
I would. This is for our students. I would take a step back. I call it through osmosis, right? If you take a step back and you look at our community, everyone is experiencing the same thing.
It is. We all. That's
gain strength. Don't go in a hole.
Well, and also don't feel like you're the only one.
Exactly.
Right?
That's what
actually,
I mean.
You're like probably 100% not.
Yeah.
Well, I think there is that idea. It's like, but so and so doesn't seem that way. But maybe they are that way. But they're just the way that they present themselves is not.
They took a breath.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think though, this is a great time, for all of us to really stand up for what we believe in, and also it helps with our mental health. I think that's kind of what we've been talking about the last 50 minutes or so, about how by being genuine with ourselves, and actually, I just think it's really important to embrace other cultures. Yes. I think that is a part of our mental wellness, and because if we're just fixated and stuck in our own kind of world,
you can't learn.
You can't learn. But I do think we need more programs just to keep being developed and increase awareness and communication as like kind of key ways to move toward acceptance and health. Okay, I think I'm going to ask you one last question, which is the very last one, which is, I was wondering, do you have any final words of wisdom of how we can put more Black history into our lives that would help create more mental health?
I'd say maybe just have the ability to recognize it around you, and maybe if we identify it in all history at all times, because it's this consortium of America that makes America who America is, and what we are, I should say. And so I think if we took that moment to really recognize it in that manner, and not only in February, it would move things a great deal. I think we do it unconsciously, but if we were to really do it consciously, it would eliminate so much hassle.
It's so true.
Yeah, it would reciprocate.
Well, and also like in psychology, we talk a lot about making things that are unconscious conscious.
Man, yeah.
So it's so true. And also, I think there's so much vibrancy in the Black. Like I love learning about Black history, and I feel like I actually relate and identify with much of it. So you might be surprised if you learn about another culture. You might actually really relate with it, or you might meet someone who inspires you or makes you feel better too.
Yeah,